My family, the Stirling, are filthy rich. We have by a small country kind of money. But we've also got a nasty little tradition. See, the women in my family are immortal. Once we hit 20, we stop aging. We don't get old, we don't die. And we stay hot forever. But there's a catch. On the wedding night, the new groom has to service the ancestors. And I don't mean pour them tea. He has to spend the night in bed with them. All of them. It keeps the bloodline pure and gives the elders a power boost. Right now we have over 80 ancestors scattered around the globe. They all look like drop-dead gorgeous 20-year-olds. But let's be real, they're my relatives and they're freaks. Some like it gentle, sure. But others, they're into the rough stuff. The sick stuff, pain. Blood, choking. You name it. Most ordinary guys can't survive a night like that. Their hearts just give out. I was stressing about this doom. Scrolling on my phone when I got a text from my boyfriend. Babe, did you tell your parents about us getting hitched? My boyfriend's name is Julian Dance. He was a computer science scholarship kid. Total brainiac. My family has money to burn. So I was always the generic rich girl on campus. Treating everyone to drinks. Jillian and I shouldn't have even crossed paths. He came from nothing. While everyone else was partying. He was working double shifts. At Starbucks or bussing tables in the cafeteria. He owned like 3 shirts total. We met because of a cliché. I accidentally spilled my iced latte all over him. I watched him try to wipe it off his cheap hoodie for a minute. Before I sighed, stop it. Pay for it. Is 10 grand enough? I knew his hoodie was worth maybe $20 at Goodwill. I just wanted to help the guy out. I wiped my ass with 10 grand. But he looked me dead in the eye and said, "Excuse me, have some respect. Not everyone wants your charity money." That refusal got me. Immortality is boring as hell. You know, Julian was interesting. I started stalking him, well, observing him. Besides being broke. He was perfect, tall. Dark, handsome. Killer on the basketball court. Straight A's. And he was a saint to his mom. Sending every penny he earned back home for her medical bills. About 2 years ago, he confessed his feelings to me. Blushing like a virgin. Even after we started dating. He refused to spend a dime of my money. But he'd save up for months just to buy me a nice necklace. He was adorable. Now we're seniors. My 20th birthday is coming up. The day I stop aging. And the day I can legally marry in the eyes of my clan. Julian proposed on Christmas. I was caught up in the moment and said, yes. We plan to hit City Hall, right? After the holidays, but now I was getting cold feet. Didn't want him to die. I didn't want him to be torn apart by a room full of horny, superpowered women. My fear came from Aunt Lana. 3 years ago, she brought a guy home. They were soulmates. But on their wedding night, the guy died. Aunt Lana snapped. She screamed that the ancestors murdered her lover. She hated us, hated the tradition. She ran away and hasn't been back since. I wanted to marry Julian. But I was terrified he'd end up like Aunt Lana's guy. A corpse in a tuxedo. I couldn't sleep. Tossing and turning until my dad knocked on the door. "Cecilia, you still up?" My dad is a total DILF. Sharp jawline, movie star looks. He looks like he could be my older brother. Because he stopped aging at 30. After his own wedding night. Ordeal, Dad. Julian proposed. "Aunt. What are you thinking?" "I don't know." I whispered. "I don't want him to die." Dad smiled that charming, creepy smile and patted my head. "Cecilia, he might not die. What if he's willing to do it?" Would Julian be willing? If he really loved me. How could he be okay with banging 80 other women in one night? But if he didn't love me? No. That's impossible. Everyone else loved my credit card. But Julian loved me. He was different. I couldn't figure out how to tell him before I knew it. It was Valentine's Day. We had a candlelight dinner and checked into a 5-star hotel suite. Julian had saved up for. In the massive jacuzzi. We were naked, skin pressed against skin. Kissed me like he was starving. After we went round 2 in the water. He whispered in my ear, "Babe. What did your parents say? Did they agree?" I nodded. In the Stirling family, women call the shots. "Yes, babe. I love you so much." He looked ecstatic and went down on me again. After the sex, I passed out. But I had a nightmare. In the dream, Julian was naked being ravaged by a horde of women. He was screaming at first. Then just whimpering. When I opened the door, he was lying on the bed, pale as a sheet. covered in bruises and bite marks. He looked at me with bloodshot eyes and hissed, "Cecilia. I hate you. I will never forgive you." No. I woke up screaming, drenched and sweat. Julian. The bed was empty. It was the middle of the night on Valentine's Day. Where the hell did he go? I threw on a robe and went to find him. As I passed the fire exit stairwell, I heard noises, weird noises. A woman moaning, typical sloppy. Wet kissing sounds and a man grunting. Peeked over the railing in the dim light. I saw Julian, my shy, blushing Julian, tongue deep in another woman's mouth. His hand was already buried deep under her tight mini skirt. Fingers working overtime. Shock doesn't even cover it. Was this the same guy who pushed me away when we first started dating? Because he respected me? My best friend and roommate. Tiffany always told me he was a rare gem. And that I should lock him down. And here he was barely an hour after screwing me. Balls deep in someone else in a stairwell. My brain was short-circuiting. I was about to run down there and scream. But then the woman turned her head. It was Tiffany, my best friend. The one who told me not to date a charity case. When I first met Julian. The one who helped me trash talk him when we fought. They were grinding on each other like animals. Jules. Tiffany panted. Breaking the kiss. Did she say? Yes. She did. Julian smirked. Creating a disgusting string of saliva between them. We're hitting City Hall on the night. I hate it, she whined. Why does she get everything? She's born rich, a total brat. And we have to scrape for pennies. It's not fair. I stood there frozen. My family's wealth wasn't magic. Generations of us worked, suffered and hid our secret to build this empire. I gave to charity. I helped my friends. Why was my money suddenly my sin? Tiffany cried fake tears into his chest. I'm so sorry you have to sacrifice yourself with her. Don't say that. Julian suited her. Stroking her hair. It's for our future. Just hold on a little longer. Once I marry her, her money is my money. One little accident for her and I'm the sole heir. Then we never have to beg for scraps again. I stood in the darkness and smiled a cold, hard smile. So my love was just scraps to them. The next afternoon, I invited Tiffany out for coffee. Tiff, Julian and I are getting married. I flashed the ring and leaned into Julian, making sure I looked pathetic and in love. Tiffany's face twitched for jealousy. But she forced a smile. OMG, really? Yay. If I hadn't seen them dry humping in the stairwell, I would have believed her. I had already hired a PI that morning. I got the file an hour ago. Turns out Julian and Tiffany grew up together. Childhood sweethearts. They targeted me the second they saw me pull up in a Porsche. Freshman year. They created this proud poor boy persona for Julian just to hook me. Tiffany was the mole, feeding him info on exactly what I liked. It was a long con and I was the mark. We're getting the license on the 9th. I said cheerfully. Then we're going to my family estate for a big dinner. You have to come, Tiff. You're my bestie. She looked at Julian nervously. Julian gave a subtle shake of his head. Oh, I shouldn't intrude on a family event. Tiffany said. Nonsense. I insisted. Plus my brother holds a lot of power in the family. He's super hot and single. I want to set you up. We'd really be family, brother. Tiffany's eyes lit up. Cecilia. Julian frowned. You never mentioned a brother. Oh, he travels a lot. I lied. I pulled out my phone and showed them a picture of me. My mom and my dad. But since dad looks so young, he passes for a brother easily. Look, that's mom and that's my bro. They love guests. Tiffany stared at the photo of my dad like a hungry wolf. She agreed instantly. They were worried I wasn't the only heir. They figured they could seduce the brother, kill us both and take the whole pot. The 9th rolled around, a perfect day for a wedding or a funeral. We went to City Hall. After Julian and I signed the papers, I asked Tiffany to take photos. Actually, I chirped, Tiff. You hold the certificate. Let me take a pic of you and Julian. They panicked. What? No, that's crazy. Tiffany laughed nervously. Come on, I pushed. You're always saying you'll never marry. Just feel the vibe. Maybe you'll get lucky and marry my brother next. I pushed until they agreed. They held my marriage license, standing shoulder to shoulder. Tiffany was beaming. Julian tried to look annoyed but couldn't hide the smirk. They looked like the real couple. I snapped the photo and texted it to my dad immediately. Print this out. Big size for tonight. We drove 2 hours upstate to the Stirling estate. We pulled up, the servants lined up outside. Julian and Tiffany's jaws dropped when they walked into the main hall. It was like for Siamese, Dracula's castle. Julian pointed at a painting. Celia, that was sold at auction for 200 million last year. Is it a replica? No. A deep voice boomed from the stairs. I bought it. My dad walked down arm in arm with my mom. They looked stunning. Dad in a bespoke suit. Mom in couture. Julian. Tiffany, meet my mother and my brother. I introduced them. Your mom looks so young. Julian whispered, eyeing her up. She's over 100 technically. But looks 20. Good genes. I winked. Tiffany was virtually drooling over my dad. Dad flashed a polite smile. But I saw the cold predator look in his eyes. Let's go upstairs so you can change for dinner, I said, leading them away. The Stirling estate wasn't just a house, it was a mausoleum disguised as a mansion. The air inside tasted expensive, like old velvet, dust, and metallic irony. I led Julian and Tiffany up the grand staircase. My hand was on Julian's lower back, feeling the tension in his muscles. He wasn't tense because he was scared, he was tense because he was calculating the square footage. He was already mentally redecorating. Your room is the blue suite, I told them, opening a set of double mahogany doors. You'll have to share until the ceremony is official at midnight. Family rules. Midnight? Julian asked, setting down his duffel bag. It looked comically cheap against the Persian rug. I thought we just signed papers. The papers are for the government, I said, my voice dripping with manufactured sweetness. The midnight ceremony is for the family. It's traditional. Tiffany was already wandering around the room, touching a Ming vase with greedy fingers. And where is your brother staying? She asked, trying to sound casual. Down the hall. The master suite, I lied effortlessly. He gets lonely. He loves chatting with new guests. I saw the look they exchanged. A micro-expression of triumph. They thought they had the board set. Julian would handle the wife, Tiffany would handle the brother, and by morning, the Stirling fortune would be under new management. I left them to change for dinner. As soon as the door clicked shut, I dropped the smile. My face felt heavy, like wet clay. I walked down the corridor to my father's study. Dad, or Callum, as we were calling him tonight, was sipping a glass of something dark and thick. My mother, Elara, was lounging on the chaise. She looked 18, wearing a silk slip dress that cost more than Julian's entire life earnings. They took the bait, I said, leaning against the doorframe. Of course they did, Dad said, his voice smooth like oil. Greed is the only thing more predictable than lust. Did you give the girl the signal? She thinks you're the brother. She thinks you're the real power. She's going to try to bed you tonight to secure an insurance policy. Mom laughed. It was a terrifying sound, like wind chimes made of bones. Oh, let her try. It's been decades since I've watched a little mouse try to steal cheese from a trap. And the boy? Dad asked. He's ready, I said. He thinks he's won the lottery. He has no idea he's about to pay the tax. Dinner was a theater of the absurd. We sat at a table long enough to land a plane on. The candlelight flickered over the silverware. Julian sat next to me, playing the doting fiancé, while Tiffany sat across from Callum, practically unbuttoning her blouse with her eyes. So, Callum, Tiffany purred, swirling her wine. Cecilia says you travel a lot. What do you do? Dad smiled, that predatory grin that made wolves look like puppies. Acquisitions. I find things that are rare and vivacious. And I keep them. Sounds intense, Tiffany giggled, nudging her foot against his leg under the table. I saw Dad's eyebrow twitch in amusement. Julian, my mother interrupted, her eyes locking onto him. They were violet, unnaturally bright. Cecilia tells us you're a scholarship student. A hard worker. Yes, ma'am, Julian said, putting on his humble boy mask. I believe in earning my way. I don't like handouts. I choked on my water. The audacity. I remembered the stairwell. One little accident for her and I'm the sole heir. We admire stamina in this family, Mom said, slicing her steak. It was rare, blood pooling on the porcelain. You'll need it. Tonight is very demanding. Julian squeezed my hand. I'd do anything for Cecilia. Good, Dad said, raising his glass. To sacrifice. To sacrifice, we all echoed. Chapter 2, The Brother's Keeper. At 11:30 p.m., the house grew quiet. The servants vanished into the walls. The air pressure dropped, making my ears pop. I went to the blue suite. Julian was waiting, dressed in the silk pajamas I'd bought him. Tiffany was gone. Where's Tiff? I asked. Julian shrugged, feigning ignorance. She said she had a headache. Went to find some aspirin. Probably got lost. We both knew where she was. She was down the hall, knocking on the master suite door, ready to secure the backup plan. Come on, I said, taking Julian's hand. It's time to meet the ancestors. Meanwhile, down the hall, Tiffany pushed open the heavy oak door to the master suite. The room was dark, lit only by the fireplace. Callum, she whispered. My dad was standing by the window, looking out at the moonlit grounds. He turned, his shirt unbuttoned halfway. You shouldn't be here, Tiffany. This is a family night. I felt a connection, she said, walking toward him, swaying her hips. Cecilia is sweet. But she's a child. You seem like a man who needs a woman who knows what she wants. Dad chuckled. He walked over to a large, velvet-covered armchair in the corner. You have no idea what we need. Tiffany reached for his belt. Let me show you. Stop, a voice came from the shadows. Tiffany froze. The chair in the corner swiveled around. My mother, Elara, was sitting there. She wasn't holding a wine glass anymore. She was holding a jagged, ceremonial dagger made of obsidian. What is this? Tiffany stammered, backing away. I was just looking for the bathroom. You were looking to branch swing, Mom said, standing up. The air around her shimmered. Her beauty twisted, becoming sharp and terrifying. You plotted to kill my daughter. To take our money. Tiffany turned to run, but Dad was at the door before she could blink. He moved faster than a human should. Please, Tiffany cried, the tears real this time. Julian made me do it. It was his idea. And yet, Dad said, trailing a finger down her cheek, you were the one laughing in the stairwell. We don't waste things in this house, Mom said, walking closer. We need servants. Not the paid kind. The kind that keep secrets. Mom grabbed Tiffany's chin. You wanted to be part of the family, Tiffany? You wanted to live in the big house? Tiffany screamed as the shadows in the room seemed to detach themselves from the walls, swarming toward her. Congratulations, Dad whispered. You're hired. Forever. Chapter 3, The Rite of 80. I led Julian down to the basement. Not the wine cellar. Beneath that. The sub-basement. The air here was freezing, yet it smelled of jasmine and musk. We stood before a set of massive iron doors embossed with twisting roses. Is this a club? Julian asked, nervous now. Celia, this is getting weird. You said you'd do anything, I reminded him. I pushed the doors open. The room was a cathedral. A massive, circular chamber lined with velvet divans, silk pillows, and golden chaotic luxury. And the women. There were dozens of them. Some wore Victorian corsets, others wore flapper dresses, some wore ancient Greek chitons, and a few were naked, draped only in jewelry. They were all stunning. They all looked 20 years old. But their eyes were ancient. They stopped talking when we entered. 80 pairs of eyes fixed on Julian. The hunger in the room hit us like a physical wave. Who are they? Julian whispered, his voice trembling. My ancestors, I said. Great-grandmothers. Great-aunts. Cousins from the 1800s. The bloodline. A woman in a 1950s pin-up dress sashayed forward. This was Aunt Lana, the one who had warned me. But she didn't look sad today. She looked thirsty. Is this him? She asked, circling Julian like he was a piece of meat at a market. She sniffed his neck. He smells cheap. Like fear and polyester. He's the one, I said. Celia, let's go. Julian grabbed my arm. I don't like this. I pulled away. You wanted the money, Julian. You wanted the lifestyle. You told Tiffany you'd wait until I had an accident so you could have it all. Julian went pale. You heard? I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. The audio recording of them in the stairwell echoed through the silent cathedral. One little accident for her and I'm the sole heir. The women in the room hissed. It was a sound like steam escaping a vent. You lied to me, I said, my voice steady. You made me love you so you could gut me. Well, Julian. Here is the deal. This is the wedding night. To join the family, you have to service the family. I gestured to the room of 80 immortal, superpowered women. All of them. What? Julian backed up, hitting the iron doors. They were locked. They need energy, I explained coldly. Life force. Usually, the husband gives a little to each and he survives. He stops aging. But you have a debt to pay. And these ladies? They prefer rough. Cecilia, please. Julian fell to his knees. I love you. It was Tiffany. She manipulated me. You're pathetic, I said. A woman in a torn medieval gown stepped forward, her teeth filed into points. Can I start? I haven't had a fresh one since the plague. Be my guest, I said. I turned my back as the first scream tore through the air. It wasn't just sex. It was a feeding. I walked to the edge of the room where a golden throne sat. I sat down and watched. They descended on him like a swarm of beautiful locusts. Julian fought at first, screaming for help, screaming for God, screaming for me. But the Stirling women were strong. They had the strength of centuries. I watched as they drained him. Not of blood, but of time. The ritual transferred vitality. That's how we stayed young. We took the years the men would have lived. Julian aged. In the first hour, his hair grayed. By the third hour, his skin began to sag. He was weeping, broken, passed from one woman to another. They were relentless. Some bit him. Some whispered madness into his ears. Some broke his fingers just to hear the snap. He looked at me through the crowd, his eyes cloudy with cataracts. He looked 80 years old. Celia. He wheezed. His voice was a dry rattle. I stood up and walked over to him. He was lying on a pile of silk cushions, naked, withered, a skeleton wrapped in loose, liver-spotted skin. He was trembling uncontrollably. My turn, I whispered. I leaned down and kissed his forehead. I felt the surge. The final spark of his youth, his potential, his future, it flowed out of him and into me. It felt like drinking liquid starlight. My skin tingled. The fatigue I'd felt for weeks vanished. My vision sharpened. I felt strong. Indestructible. The clock struck midnight. My 20th birthday. I stood up. Julian gasped one last time, his heart fluttering like a dying moth, and then stopped. He lay there, a corpse of a 90-year-old man who had been 22 just hours ago. Happy birthday, Cecilia, Aunt Lana said, wiping blood from her lip. She looked radiant. Chapter 4, The Golden Cage. The next morning, the sun hit the estate with a brilliance that hurt. I sat on the patio, drinking a mimosa. My skin was flawless. I didn't even need moisturizer. I felt the change deep in my marrow, the stillness. I had stopped aging. I was frozen in this peak perfection forever. Dad walked out, reading a newspaper. He looked refreshed. Where's the body? I asked, buttering a croissant. Incinerated, Dad said without looking up. Cardiac arrest. Tragic. The stress of the wedding was too much for the poor boy. And Tiffany? Dad gestured to the garden. A woman was kneeling in the dirt, planting hydrangeas. She wore a maid's uniform that looked like it was from the 1920s. She turned when she heard us. It was Tiffany. But her eyes were blank. Empty. Her mouth was sewn shut with gold thread. She saw me and flinched, terror radiating off her. She hurriedly went back to digging in the dirt. She makes a decent gardener, Dad mused. Though she cries a bit too much. I looked at my best friend. The girl who wanted my life. The girl who mocked my charity. She had her wish. She would live here forever, serving the Stirlings, kept alive by the ambient magic of the house, a silent doll in our collection. I looked down at my hand. The engagement ring was gone. In its place was the Stirling family crest ring, heavy gold and ruby. I pulled out my phone. I had a notification from a dating app I'd downloaded 5 minutes ago. New match, Michael. Pre-med student. Volunteer firefighter. Loves dogs. I swiped right. Dad, I said, smiling. I think I might go back to campus next week. I'm feeling generous again. Dad lowered the paper and grinned, his teeth white and sharp. That's my girl. Remember, Cecilia, the poor always need our help. I took a sip of champagne. It tasted like victory. I know, I said. And I have so much love to give.